All right, boys, we're going to jump right in today into our topic because me and Zach take 10 years to cover anything while Seth is gone. So I think we need to jump right into Bigby Presents Glory of the Giants, the newest book from Wizards of the Coast, talking all about giants, everything about them, all about their lore, different types of creatures, including a subclass as well for barbarians, which is really neat. I've given it a good long read here. I've really dug into it a little bit more than a lot of the other books that have come out recently, and I have to say, just general thoughts. I'm impressed. I like what they did with all of the giant lore. They were very clear on it, and they even dove into a lot of kind of sub-giant races that you hear about, including things like Goliaths and Fomorians, Ettins, that sort of a thing. Very thoroughly impressed with this, and I'm kind of excited to see where they go from here. Before we jump into too much of a breakdown, Zach, do you have any initial thoughts on this?
Yeah, well, so what I'll say... this is it's a quality book, and it's very much a sister piece to Fizban's Treasury of Dragons in my mind. So if you read Fizban's and you really liked the especially the materials that they give you as a DM for crafting dragon encounters, or the dragon layers they had, the rules for dragon hordes, and then of course the bestiary. If that's the main thing that you really appreciated about this or that book, then I think this is a great one for you to pick up. What I will say is, if you just bought Fizban's for the character options, they're a little lighter in that regard. So if you're a player, I'd say maybe skip this one. But overall, I'm also very satisfied with this book. I think it's really, I love giants, so it's nice to have them lean a little bit further into like what they can do with those creatures, because what we had in the monster manual, and even in Xanathar's, the variant giants they gave us, were really, it's a big sack of hit points, and they've got a regular attack that they do. So it's nice to see, them breathe some life into like the breadth of what we can make giants into and how we can spice up a giant themed campaign, right? So overall, very, very interesting book, but Drew, why don't we go ahead and just hop into it? Also, just welcome back to Table Talk Friday. My name is Zach Carvon. I'm joined by my one best friend, Andrew Romano. I'm sure we're both doing great. So in any case, just jumping right in here, the very start of the book is laid out exactly like Fizban's Treasury of Dragons. So they've got a nice little... it's not really an origin story like they did with Fizban's, where they introduced... the three different the three different creation dragons, Bahamut, Tiamat, and then Sardior. But they do have a significant moment in giant lore that sort of defines the rest of the world there that they open up with. It's Dian Castra's saga. And being completely frank with you, I didn't know very much about the giant lore for having played all the way through Storm King's Thunder. I know... there's Anam the Allfather, right? And then he's got his Patreon, Table Talk Friday.
His Patreon, oh my gosh.
Yeah, where you can support us over there. No, his Pantheon is what I was gonna say. Of he's got his different children that were heads of the different types of giants in the Ordning, right? Hill, Stone, the others, Fire, Frost, Cloud, and Storm. He had all those, but I didn't know about some of the other lesser giant gods. So I think it's interesting the level of detail they put into like the characterization of these different significant giant characters, and then throughout the book you'll realize that Dian Castra is actually a big component here, because she's sort of a secondary narrator to Bigby, where we usually have these this character presents this book. And then they've got their little notes in the margins throughout. But we'll see those notes both from Bigby and from Dian Castra, which I thought was interesting. And then, the art throughout the entire book also just features them going on various adventures and reporting back on the things they found. So,
yeah. And just regarding...
a nice way to start.
Yeah, regarding some of that lore, I agree with Zach here. Playing through Storm Kings, I was not aware of a lot of this stuff going on, which I'm kind of surprised about. What I just kind of thought about and realized after reading through a lot of this book is that the All-Father is very much so like the Zeus of the giant pantheon, if you will, right?
Oh, absolutely.
He had all of these kids, and I didn't realize he had basically a kid for each type of giant, which is kind of crazy, including things like the Fomorians, where it was very like a Hephaestus sort of a vibe, where he cast him down and they became these grotesque creatures kind of a thing, which is very neat. Did not realize there was literally a son for each of the giant types, nor that there were these ignored daughters either, which was very interesting. When we went through Storm Kings, there wasn't really a theme of kind of pushing any of the, the female giants out of the way. I never got that vibe, especially since, no spoilers included, we ran into a female storm giant ruler of sorts, and she was great. She was wonderful, and we worked with her throughout the campaign. We helped her rule. We protected her rule.
and her sisters, of course, who were maybe not so great, but yeah, they were definitely heavily featured there for sure.
Yeah, so it was kind of surprising to me to hear that a lot of the daughters had been kind of pushed off to the side there, because I never got that vibe over in Storm Kings. But even the daughters do sound like they're really cool. Diane Castro kind of gives me a vibe of a trickery domain cleric with like a giant flavor to it. It sounds very cool, very trickery, deceitful kind of a vibe. It sounds very interesting. And I like the fact that they told this story from Bigby and her point of view. So when you go through the book, you actually have a lot of little notes, and it's similar to some of the other books that Wizards has released. You get to see kind of Bigby's take on it, and then Diane Castro reviewed his text, right? That's the funny little bit in the beginning of the book. So she has little Post-it notes throughout the book of like how she agrees or disagrees with them and her experiences, which is really neat. Not to mention, I don't think we said anything about the art in this book. The art's kind of great. Absolutely love it. A lot of the cool giant scenes. There's actually a picture in the book of a frost giant wrestling a fire dragon of sorts that's battling a town, and they're just destroying all the buildings. Very cool picture of Bigby hanging out with Diane Castro, where she has some sort of large magical staff that she's using. Looks like maybe she's doing some sort of resurrection spell or something. Very, very cool stuff in this book. Really like the lore. Zach, I don't want to go too far into the lore, but have you heard about the Etten lore? Because I thought you'd be specifically interested in that one with the orc relation there.
Well, yeah. So I believe they do mention in this book, and so overall, the focus is definitely like the main giants that exist within the Ordning. So hill through storm giants, but they do reference the lesser giants, or the creatures of a giant type that aren't capital G giants, right? So Ettins, for example, in the monster manual, I believe they were stated to be orcs who were tainted in some way by Demogorgon or like some demonic force that which somehow turns them into giants. But in here they also offer a secondary explanation for why they might be giants, and they may be distant relatives of giants that also descended from Grolantor, who is the hill giant progenitor, son of Anam.
Yeah, right on the nose there. I personally love Ettins. I've actually used an Etten in one of my one-offs very, very long time ago, and the players seem to have a blast with it. I actually got to roleplay each head differently, and it was very fun. I was basically roleplaying it like two different goblin voices. He was just this big beefy Etten that was like, he was forcing himself upon a town. He was like eating some of the townsfolk and stuff like that. I like Ettins a lot. I'm glad they mentioned those.
And what I'll say, one of my favorite monsters in the bestiary section, not to skip ahead, is the Echo of Demogorgon that they've got there, which is just like a fiendish Etten who's become fully morphed into Demogorgon's image, and so he's got those two heads, but then also his arms become like these tentacle things, and he's just this big evil demon looking thing, and super cool. I like that's there, and I might be stealing that for a unnamed campaign in the future. We'll see.
No, I hope you do, because they're really cool. I won't pretend to be a Demogorgon expert. I don't know anything about Demogorgon besides the fact that he's got two heads, which that's not a spoiler in any way. You could look at a picture of Demogorgon on any book. He's terrifying looking.
Yeah, not the Demogorgon from Stranger Things, of course. He's actually a big monkey man, but with two heads. So I don't know how they got that.
but he's super cool. I was surprised just because we jumped over to that one. I was surprised how low of a CR rating that one was, because Demogorgon, to me, from my understanding, is some sort of Hell Prince or Hell Guardian beast thing, right? So he's big and powerful and beefy. But
Please, he's a Prince of the Abyss.
Oh, it's Prince of the Abyss. See, but that Prince of the Abyss to me sounds like a CR 20 minimum. And this Echo guy, which I know he's not the Demogorgon himself, obviously, but this Echo of Demogorgon, this Orc or Etin that has been shifted into this grotesque form, it was only like a CR 5 or something along those lines, which kind of surprised me. But hey, I'd be excited to fight it anyway. Oh, see, that just seems very low.
Yeah, to your point, though, that is one of the lowest CR creatures that we get in here. Most of these new monsters that they're giving us are very much beefed up versions of giants that we've seen before. So, yeah, it's it's interesting that Demogorgon's Echo specifically ended up on the the mid-tier spectrum versus a lot of these monsters, which are rivaling the dragons from Fizzbands in terms of what tier of play you're going to be using these guys at.
Yeah, and I gotta say, I really just like how much they dove in here. And I know we're jumping around a little bit. We talked about some of the creatures in the back. I do want to kind of go back to some of before we jump into the actual subclass here, the Barbarian subclass, Path of the Giant. I do want to kind of jump into some more of the lore stuff in the front here. Because I know me and Zach, and actually Seth as well, we've talked about before that there is a lack of understanding on Cyclops and how they kind of are involved in the world of D&D, and they do actually specifically mention alongside the Ettins, the Fomorians, right alongside, they do give a little bit of lore behind the Cyclops, which I think is great. I don't think we've gotten that anywhere else, not in any sort of monster manual or anything that I've read anyway, unless I've missed it. So I was really glad they addressed them as well. And then also, the strangest one, the one I was not ready for, and Zach, I imagine you probably agree, the death giants that they decided to include are sick. I'm really thrilled that they included these. I've never heard of them before, but I think it's a very cool angle to take on the giants here, especially since you don't normally think of giants as like, I don't know, big evil casters. Usually when I think of giants, I think they're probably good. Maybe they're like a traveling group. Maybe they eat like a little town or something here. They're like some hill giants, right? But I don't think of them as world-ending threats usually. And to me, death giants are terrifying threats that we see in this book.
Yeah, absolutely. I do. So as far as I'm aware, I don't think death giants have appeared in any prior edition of D&D as well. So I think this is a welcome addition. I like you said, I like that they lean more on the caster-y side, and sort of the way that they work them into the lore is they're just an offshoot of cloud giants that have become focused on life and death, and so they're sort of heretical in that way. They're not included in the ordning for that reason. But yeah, super cool. I love the artwork for the death giants. And I like that you have that ability to. I mean, this is a character that screams big bad evil guy, absolutely. Or even if you want to make them sort of like a neutral figure, like imagine having to go to a death giant and petition them for some aid or whatever, but they've got whatever thing that you have to give up in order to get them to help or whatever. They're just a very imposing figure for sure.
Yeah, very, very cool. And that about covers most of the giant types there in the beginning of the book. As we kind of go on through the first chapter there, they also talk about some of the other settings, which, again, from Zach's perspective, he mentioned that, maybe this is a book more geared towards DMs, and I would have to agree, because they go through each of the different settings in D&D, and they kind of talk about the giant's role in that setting. So you have some like an Eberron, right, where there's a city of giants that ruled for millennia, and it just sounds wicked cool. And eventually it collapsed due to a rebellion of the elves that they had enslaved, as well as the dragons attacking all at once. And so now in Eberron, they're kind of scattered, similar to what I would kind of think of in the Sword Coast. But they touch on things like that in Greyhawk and Dragonlance, mentioned Eberron, all that sort of stuff. And I just like that they gave the giants sort of different options in these different settings, right? So they're not always, nomadic and spread out, kind of like what you expect now, but there are places where they still kind of rule, or they still have a stronger grip on society, places where they work more closely with the small folk, or places where maybe they are enslaving a lot of them and having them do their bidding. So that was really cool, just having a little bit of flavor of giants, depending on what setting or what book you're running. I think that was really neat, especially since I don't think giants were involved in Eberron very much. Zach, you could probably correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't remember seeing any giants or hearing about them over in Sharn or Eberron really as a whole. But very cool.
Yeah,
Glad
so
they moved them around.
Yeah, the way that they're set up there is they live on the continent of Zendrick. So most of the adventures in Eberron you'll find are on Corvair. And so the giants are very much separate and not they're not as common in daily life. Like you might find some sort of on the fringes. Like they mention you might find them in Drome, where there are a lot of monstrous creatures that live there, or they might live in the I think it's the Mror holds where the dwarves are. But generally speaking, they're you wouldn't find giants walking around Sharn, for instance. I mean, it's just not built for them.
I kind of love the idea of giants building Sharn, though, because we talk about how tall the buildings were, right? That you needed actual magic items to prevent death from falling off of these things. I love the idea that there are actual giant, maybe they're stone giants of sort, or cloud giants, maybe just reaching up and constructing these buildings. I think it would actually be a really sick sight from an outsider perspective if you haven't been there.
Well, yeah. Cloud giants might be appropriate, honestly, because they do have that big floating upper layer all the way at the top where the elite live. That's very much like a cloud giant castle, basically.
Oh, that would be really sick. Oh. All right. Well,
so in any case, oh yeah. We'll go ahead and move on to the next part. But before we touch on character creation, I do just want to note that there is an elephant in the room surrounding the artwork in this book. So I'll address that. And Drew, I'm not sure if you're aware, which while most of the artwork in this book is just, it's gorgeous. I love all the different, types of giants that they have. And, it's very well done. There actually is a bit of controversy around it. There are some, at least one piece of art in this book was actually AI generated. And so, so that's sort of made kind of a stir. Yeah. So it wasn't, apparently Wizards of the Coast didn't have a policy on using AI art before, but one of the artists for this book, specifically for the Frost Giant Ice Shaper, if you go to the bestiary there, that piece of art was AI generated. And so now Wizards has come out and said, we will no longer be using AI art in any of our future books, but this was just something that snuck past the publishers before the book hit print. So that piece in general, and you can even just looking at it, you can kind of see, oh yeah, it doesn't exactly match the style of a lot of the other art in this book. So really a shame that happened, but I don't think it detracts from the rest of the book necessarily. But now just looking at it, I can't unsee it.
Yeah, I'm looking at the picture now, and I guess I do see it definitely doesn't match the art style of the rest. I think it's funny that you mentioned it, or that's a controversy, because I never would have noticed. I remember I was looking at this picture earlier today as I was kind of reviewing some of this stuff, and I was looking and I was like, man, that's a really cool picture of this frost giant here with looks like she's got some winter wolves off to her side. She looks real beefy, some big thick armor. I'm kind of surprised that anybody even noticed that. I guess there are people with with better eyes than myself. Because I still really like all the artwork, so I'm surprised it was such a big deal. But I guess glad to see that they won't be AI generated in the future, I suppose.
Yeah, and we'll see how long that lasts, I guess. I mean, yeah, I don't know. But in any case, just thought that was interesting. Didn't want to go the whole episode without bringing it up. But in any case, we'll move on to character creation. So I'll say generally in this book, like I mentioned before, there aren't as many options as there were in Fizban. So if you're a player, this might not be the book for you. So they only provide one subclass option and then a couple of backgrounds and feats. But really, mostly, I'll say that the options here aren't setting anyone ablaze with how cool they are. But I do really like the subclass that they give us, the Path of the Giant. So essentially, it's very much akin to the Rune Knight, and I kind of feel like if they would have held off on putting the Rune Knight into Tasha's, it would have been perfect in this book. But here we are. So so we've got what we've got. But the Path of the Giant Barbarian is very much in that same vein, where they're a warrior who grows in size and has elements of giants that they use. So at third level, let's see, they gain a cantrip. You can so you learn to speak, read, and write Giant or one other language if you already know it, and then you get either Druidcraft or Thaumaturgy, using Wisdom as your spellcasting ability. Okay, whatever. That's all flavor. The meaty feature that you get here is when you rage, you gain the following benefits. Crushing Throw. When you make a successful ranged attack with a thrown weapon using Strength, you can add your rage damage bonus to the attack's damage roll. And so that's the main thing. This is the giant who throws things, right? Because that's sort of like there are two things that giants can do, at least in the monster manual. It's attack with a big ass weapon, or throw rocks, basically, right? So this is the giant that's all about throwing things. And then additionally at third level, when you rage, your reach increases by 5 feet, and if you're smaller than large, you become large along with anything you're wearing. And then same as Rune Knight, if there's not enough room to increase your size doesn't change. But yeah, neat feature at third level. I will say it's probably comparable in power to a lot of the other barbarians that aren't Totem Warrior. So it's still not it's not vying for first place or anything. But it's cool that you get the extra damage on your throwing, and then it gets better as you level up. So at 6th level, you get your Elemental Cleaver, which while you rage, you can add damage of either acid, cold, fire, thunder, or lightning damage. And so you infuse your weapon while you're raging. It deals an extra 1d6 damage of the chosen type when an attack hits. And additionally, when you infuse your weapon with this power, it also gains the thrown property with a range of 20 feet to 60 feet. 60 at disadvantage, of course, and then if you throw it, it works like a dwarven thrower. So you throw it, and then it immediately comes back to you. So super cool that that's built in there. And then let's see.
Well, before you go on, Zach, I just want to give some quick thoughts here.
Go for it.
I'm happy with the Elemental Cleaver ability at level 6. I mean, if you could give the barbarian some more damage on their swings, by all means, sounds great. Just throw it in there. Why not? I think it's interesting because if you read the text of the Elemental Cleaver, it does do additional elemental damage that you could swap out and whatnot with a bonus action, right? I think that's great. I do think it's weird that it actually changes your weapon's damage type entirely to that element, which is sort of weird. I read it a few times, and I think that's definitely what's intended here. So,
that's a good point. Yeah, while you wield the infused weapon during your rage, the weapon's damage type changes to the chosen type, and it deals that extra damage. So that's cool too. I'm actually a big fan of that.
I don't know. It seems odd to change the entire weapon damage to it. I don't know, because I guess I don't see a barbarian as like just this overall elemental smiting machine, right? Maybe with like, it kind of to me leans almost more into like a paladin with like a divine smite. I imagine most of their smite attack there would do divine damage, so I like that sort of a flavor. But it just seems weird. I don't know that the axe would do all lightning damage. Small critique. It really doesn't. I don't think it changes too much, unless of course the creature is surprisingly resistant to something or can adjust, right? But just thought it was interesting that they had actually said that all of the damage has changed. I don't think you see that a whole lot in D&D, but
no, for sure that is unique. But what I'll say is definitely thunder damage is probably the one that most people would lean to here, into like sort of that storm giant flavor. And at that point, it's just this weapon that has this force around it, right? And every time you strike, it just it's difficult to imagine that with thunder damage. I guess because it's like sound waves, right? So I guess every time you hit someone, it's just got that. It does like a little shock wave, and you get that burst of thunder, which which seems pretty metal. And then which, what I'll say is it is interesting, though, that you don't get this at 3rd level, and you have to wait until 6th, just because most barbarians, if they do have a feature that gives them like an extra d6 on their damage, they get that at 3rd level. Like I'm thinking the Zealot Barbarian, they get that at 3rd level. Storm Herald gets that at 3rd level. Even the Berserker, right? They get their bonus action attack at 3rd level. So it's interesting that you don't get that until 6th. That might be a deterrent for some people, but I do love the flavor of it. So I'm kind of all for it. And then at 10th level, you get Mighty Impel, which allows you to throw people as a bonus action. So while you're raging, you can choose one medium or smaller creature within your reach and move it to an unoccupied space that you can see within 30 feet of yourself. This can be allies or enemies, but an unwilling creature must succeed on a strength saving throw, and the DC is 8 plus proficiency plus your strength mod. So the one thing I'll say is I feel like a lot of tables probably have ways for ruling throwing people already, and it probably had something to do with grappling. So taking that away from being an athletics check, which a barbarian would succeed on every time, is, I don't know, I'm of two minds about it, right? Because maybe this is a little too powerful if you can just throw anyone at any time, but it does kind of suck that they are making the save, so you can use this and it won't go off the way you wanted to, even though your barbarian has advantage and expertise on your athletics checks at this point.
And I will say, though, the save that they're making to not be thrown as far as enemies go, it does use your strength mod. So it's still up there. It's still strong. They're not forcing you to use some sort of, wisdom or charisma kind of a save here. You do get to use your strength as a barbarian. So there's a good chance they're going to be able to throw them anyway. But agreed, I do appreciate the contests of grappling each other as a barbarian or a strength-based character. I think it's fun, and it's very, I'm stronger than you kind of a thing. Like it's an arm wrestling competition, right? I want to win the contest. I want to jump into it. So I think it's a little odd taking it out, but I do like it. I agree it's very strong. A sort of a gripe here, they don't mention anything about throwing things that are not weapons, right? So as a barbarian, I'm thinking tavern brawler. I want to pick up a barrel, just like the picture you see on page 12. I want to throw a barrel. I want to throw a chair. I'm gonna pick up maybe part of a countertop and chuck it at the enemies. They don't really say anything about that stuff, so I can only assume it's considered improvised weapons, which at this time you still get the bonus of your rage damage added on to your thrown weapons, but they don't say anything about the actual damage that you'd be doing if you were to throw something else. And I'm not sure if that's because it was simply skipped or because there's a feat involved with stone giants a little later where they get to throw rocks, or maybe it's just that it would be too strong if every turn you were bonus action throwing something for too much damage. I'm not quite sure, but they really didn't press on it here, and I'm a little disappointed, but I'm not sure what you thought about that, Zach.
Yeah, what I'll say is, it's probably feature bloat, so they didn't want it to be too crunchy, right? Because then you have to, adjudicate, all right, what kind of damage does throwing a table do, right? Versus throwing a barrel or a rock or, whatever. I mean, to your point, that all does sort of fall under the umbrella of improvised weapons in 5e. And that's something that the DM sort of decides. So I'm thinking they probably just didn't want to make it too specific there. But to your point, I feel like Tavern Brawler would go great with this subclass, because then you could be, it'd be more of your attack action, right, instead of this bonus action to move a creature. But you could already do that kind of shit already in 5e, so you don't necessarily need this feature to tell you that you can. So I personally, I feel like it's okay that they left that off. But if you really do want like a specific bonus action thrown object thing, to your point, there's a feat that does that in a little bit. So we'll cover that. And then at 14th level, they get Demiurgic Colossus, which when you rage, your reach increases by 10 feet, and your size can increase to large or huge, your choice. And you can use Mighty Impel to move creatures that are large or smaller. So at this point, you're chucking ogres and gorgons and whatever. It doesn't matter. You can do this as a bonus action. And then in addition, the extra damage from your elemental cleaver increases to 2d6. Appropriately powerful. And, just imagining the extra reach on this, which I don't think we've harped on enough, paired with a bugbear and a weapon that already has reach, that's at 14th level, you've got 25 feet of reach that you can, at this point, you don't even need to be throwing shit. You can use your your greatsword or your glaive or whatever and just smack anyone anywhere, which at this point, you basically become like the a kaiju on the battlefield, just terrorizing the rest of combat. No one can escape your reach. That's awesome.
Which is absolutely disgusting. I know we've seen Sean do a build like this recently, but I just can't imagine with a reach of 25 feet, 30 feet. Like, there are some ranged attacks that don't go that far. That's insane that you could reach that far with anything.
Or even just at base, you have 15 feet at this point, like with any weapon and race combination. So that's still disgusting. 15 feet of threatened space. It's crazy. And very, very appropriate for this kind of character. Honestly, the fact that Rune Knights didn't already get extra reach, I think, is interesting. But even, just having, taking up 9 squares, there's no one that anyone can stand where you're not going to be able to hit them at that point.
Yeah, it's great. Gotta say, I love the subclass. I think it's pretty solid. I don't think it's overly powerful, like you said, Zach. It's not rivaling the Totem Barbarian or anything like that. It's definitely not the weakest one though, and I like it just because of the supportive value it offers with being able to move your teammates around as a bonus action without sacrificing too many of your attacks there. So big fan of that. And Zach, I did actually give you. I told you I was talking to Seth prior to this, which we did not mention. Seth is not here today. He was a little busy, but I was talking to Seth about this, and I've kind of been on the fence of what I want to play in Spelljammer.
Ooh, are you thinking of doing this one?
I think this might be it. I may be a Path of the Giant Barbarian Plasmoid. That might be the way to go here. I'm thinking about it. I think I have locked in the idea of Barbarian, and this is a strong contender for playing in space. I don't know how that's going to work in space with being a Path of the Giant. I'm not sure if there are space giants or not. I don't think they mentioned too many of them in this book here. But I guess we'll have to see. I definitely think this will be fun. I love the idea of moving people through the plasma. Like, I could put someone inside of my ooze and, like, launch them out. I think it would be pretty sick. And of course, reach.
That'd be awesome too. You grab your allies and you say we're in space combat, right? And there's another ship over to the side. You can just throw your allies over to that end as a bonus action, and then jump over yourself. Or even you're on the enemy ship and you're picking people up and chucking them out of the air bubble so that the ship leaves them behind.
That's actually really funny that you've mentioned, because I hadn't thought about the actual synergy there. I was just thinking of the theme itself and because they have reach. We just talked about reach, right? A lot of creatures, like, for example, Sean's build with reach, it really didn't make any sense if you think about it. Right? Like, how is he reaching that far? Like, he's not disconnecting his joints at his arm, and he's not removing his arm itself, right? Like, how would you possibly
he's just
reach
got
that
long
far?
limbs,
really, really long arms. But with the plasmoid, it actually makes perfect sense because I have pseudopods. So I could actually stretch out, and it, to me, actually explains how I have that kind of reach. So I was just thinking from a theming perspective, but you're absolutely correct. I could throw people to other ships, which would be insane. So now I'm really leaning into it, to be honest. Thanks for that heads up.
Now I'm even thinking, like, you could... I don't think we're going to get to 14th level in Spelljammer, but if we did, just imagine turning into this huge fucking blob, and then, we don't even need, anything else to battle this ship. We just fling Gordo into space, and then, you just fly at it at this, as this huge fucking mass, and just glob onto the side of the ship, and I don't even know what at that point. Start ripping it apart with your bare hands.
Well, you know what? Now I have to know, because you were talking about the 14th level ability where they can get huge potentially, but plasmoids inside of their racial options there, they explain that plasmoids can fit through 1-inch spaces. So can I be just this colossal-sized ooze, but still get through doors and stuff? Will I never be restricted by my size? That's pretty crazy.
Yeah. No, that would exactly be the case. Yeah. So that's cool. Like you're in a you're in a enclosed space basically, and if you get big, then you just fucking gelatinous cube up up to the walls basically, and then you just become this impassable force, right? You're just suction to all the spot. There's nowhere for anyone to go. They got to go through you.
Oh my gosh. Okay, now I have to do this thing. I appreciate the hype up, Zach. I hadn't thought it all the way through. I was just thinking of the fun little bits of it, but I think this could actually work as some sort of a build here. So I think this might be it. This might be the way to go. I think I'm going to lock in Barbarian in our next campaign.
Well, and that was even one of the things that you did as Gordo in that one shot where you're playing as a paladin. Like the coolest thing that he did was how he threw that javelin. So I definitely think this is the way for you to go for sure.
This is the path that I need to go. Are you saying, Zach?
Yeah. This is the path of the Gordo.
That's what I'll reflavor it. The path of the Gordo. That'll be it.
Uh-huh.
But moving on from Spelljammer here, my own escapades. I guess we could jump into, now that we finished up the subclass, some of the backgrounds here, which, like Zach was saying before, I don't think they are, fantastic by any means. I don't think it's extensive. They don't have, 30 new backgrounds or anything like that. It's just 2. They are cool. I do like them, especially the flavor of the giant foundling here. I do think it's very strange. For anyone that has read Strixhaven that came out many moons ago, I don't remember when it came out at this point, they did actually include connected feats to these backgrounds, which I thought they were trying to sway away from. I didn't think we'd see that again. So it's very interesting to see that there are feats connected now. Of course, if the...
Well, and they even had that in Spelljammer, too, with...
Oh, that is true. Yeah.
I forget whatever option it was, but it seems like that's definitely the direction they're headed, because they want these features in these books to be compatible with, the new player's handbook when that releases, and that's the norm.
Yeah, so I guess that will be the norm going forward. I guess I didn't expect it. I don't know, not a whole lot of people use the Strixhaven features, and maybe that's just because they're not exceptionally powerful or anything like that. But I could see people using the feats in this book, which we'll get to in just a second here. But basically, the Foundling, right? They get to speak giant. They have some equipment per usual. They get the skill proficiencies of intimidation and survival, which is kind of what you'd expect. And the sort of feel for the giant Foundling is they are a small folk, or they could be a Goliath of some sort too, which I would still consider small folk per se. Basically, they've been raised by giants. They lived around giants. Maybe they worked with them for a large period of time. There's a very nice picture on page 13 where you actually see like a normal humanoid kind of steeped over a desk where he's trying to put out a giant candle. And it just, to me, shows that these are people that have adjusted to this giant lifestyle, right? These people that have been around giants, that are accustomed to it. They're accustomed to these settings where everything might be larger than normal. That one world of Mario that I've referenced multiple times where everything's just gigantic. People that have adjusted to this. And maybe it gives kind of an Outlander hermit sort of feel where maybe they have not spoken to a lot of small folk before. Maybe they're just accustomed to speaking to their stone giant brethren, maybe hill giants of sorts, maybe people that were, forgers for fire giants. I imagine an Oswin-inspired character who's a crafter or an artificer working for fire giants, maybe as some sort of apprentice. That would be kind of
for
cool.
Sure.
I think that would be really neat. So that's kind of the feel of the Foundling. Very neat. The other one they included was the Rune Carver, which I think is actually very neat. Very much so leans into the Rune Knight itself. I'm surprised, like you were saying, Zach, I really would have expected this to come out before, or if the Rune Knight was going to come out now, I think it'd be perfect, because this really ties in well with a good background for them. I think Nuth would have probably prospered off of this one, probably would have used this one. It gives you a bunch of little spells when you get to the feat, which we'll get to in a second. But you get history, perception, proficiencies. You get a set of artisan's tools and some basic equipment there. But the idea behind the Rune Carver is they are people that have studied this magical giant rune arcane energy, right? They've studied the actual runes of power, if you will, which they talk about runes a couple pages back, actually, in the beginning of the book. And there are far more runes than I remember being represented with the Rune Knight. So even if someone were to get this book and then use it to run with the Rune Knight, I think there's some good value you could add here to your character as far as different types of runes or magic, or even just flavor to use there. Maybe you could talk to your DM about using like the Rune of Friend or the Rune of Death to kind of do some sort of different abilities there. It's always a possibility. But yeah, they just study runes. They're scholars. It kind of makes me think of the sage background, if you will, where it's someone who's studied magic for a long period of time. And I think it's interesting that it came out in the giant book here, because I would not expect a barbarian, for the most part, to have this background, which is the subclass offered in this book. Especially with the magic included. There's a lot of magic here, considering that the only subclass here is a barbarian, which is interesting. But very cool options. I like them. And I guess we could jump into, unless you have some thoughts, Zach, I guess we could jump into some of the feats here that are connected to them.
Yeah, and so the one other thing in this chapter is they give you some tidbits for ways that you might incorporate your character into like a giant world if they're not using one of these backgrounds, right? So what are the ways that a sorcerer or a paladin might associate themselves with giants or like a bard, or so they have some nice little flavor pieces, nice for a player who might not be so creative, but nothing here is super important, I wouldn't say, but nice. I mean, if anything, it's nice to they give you some tables for options. So even if you're having a hard time coming up with an idea and you're running a one shot, you can be like, oh, all right, well maybe I'll roll on the birthplaces and hometowns table, or the elemental marks table, and we'll just see what comes up. If we all have to be involved with giants in some way.
Yeah, it's kind of a good little bit of charts here for someone that does want to roll for it. I personally have never rolled for my character. I think it's more fun to kind of make it up. But, especially if you're making something on the go or you're a newer player, I think it's fantastic. The options they give you is quite a few charts here. And a lot of them are pretty fun, too. So definitely take a peek at them if you get a second. But as far as the feats go, so there are 2 of them. I was kind of hoping for a couple more, but there are just 2 here, and they are directly connected to the backgrounds, the Foundling and the Rune Carver.
What are you talking about? There are way more than 2.
Where?
Well, they've got the 2. They've got the 2 starting background feats, but then there are these other feats that you can add that use the others as prerequisites. So, or I think maybe it's just the. Let's see.
Well, I think it's the same feat. They just come in different options, like they're customizable, right?
No, so there's the Rune Shaper feat, and then there's the Strike of the Giants feat, and then they also have a specific feat for each of the standard types of giants, hill through storm, that you can take after you've already taken Strike of the Giants. So you get Strike of the Giants first, and then you have to take this other feat using that Strike of the Giants as a prerequisite.
Oh, I thought they were all connected. Oh my gosh, I read that totally wrong. That's nuts. Okay. Oh gosh, so there's a whole bunch of feats then.
Yeah, which, I'll say overall, these feats are, so in my opinion, they're neat flavor-wise, but I don't know how likely I'd be to actually use them, especially because, to your point, it feels like maybe this ought to be, I mean, it's probably a little too powerful to all be wrapped into one feat, but I don't know about taking 2 different feats just to capture the fact that I'm, into hill giants, right? Or I'm involved with hill giants in some way. So so I don't know about all that. But in any case, to talk about these feats briefly, there is so we'll start with Rune Shaper, which is that one that you mentioned before. The Rune Carver background gets you access to this. And so, first of all, you learn Comprehend Languages, and you can cast it without expending a spell slot, once per long rest, whatever. And then you also get Rune Magic, which allows you to know a number of runes equal to half your proficiency bonus, rounded down. So that's going to be 1 until you get a +4 proficiency bonus at 9th level. So all this allows you to do is, whenever you finish a long rest, you can inscribe a rune on a non-magical weapon, armor, or piece of clothing, up to the amount of total runes you know. And then you learn a first level spell corresponding to that rune. And then you can invoke that rune inscribed on the object once without expending a spell slot, and then can't do so again without a long rest. And so my issue with this, so that they give you a handful of runes that you can choose from, which correspond to a number of spells, but they're all first level spells, and none of them are like those top tier first level spell picks you're looking for, right? We don't have Hunter's Mark, we don't have Shield, we don't have Silvery Barbs, or or whatever the main first level spells that you're looking for would be. So what this ultimately boils down to is, if you take this at first level, it's a watered down Magic Initiate. And and then eventually you get another first level spell from this at 9th level. But at that point, so the spells you're getting here are Fog Cloud, Inflict Wounds, Chromatic Orb, Disguise Self, Burning Hands, Speak with Animals, Armor of Agathist, Goodberry, Long Strider, Command, Entangle, Sanctuary, or Thunder Wave. Of these, I don't really know any of these spells that I'd be willing to take a feat over. Like maybe Armor of Agathis, maybe Thunder Wave or Long Strider or Goodberry even, maybe. But I'd much rather take Magic Initiate and get that spell, and then also some cantrips to play with. I feel like overall this is just... I love the flavor of it, right? You're a student of giant rune magic, and so you're focusing on that, but this ain't it for me. I don't know your thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely not strong by any means. I do really like the flavor of it, especially if you're going to play a Rune Knight here. Don't know if I would bypass a different feat for this. The one that I'm looking at of all of these spells that I think could be good on a Barbarian would be Inflict Wounds. The problem is you can't concentrate on spells. That's not a concentration. I guess you would cast it as an action, and then is it? Let me see. Is Inflict Wounds an actual attack right off the bat, or do you hold it?
Yeah, so it is an attack, and it does 3d10. But to your point, you can't do that while you're raging, so you'd have to do Inflict Wounds and then rage. And by the time you hit 5th level, you're not going to want to be doing that anyway. You'd rather just use both your attacks for extra attack. And to that same end, who's really using their action on a first level spell at any point beyond the first few levels of play? So again, I feel like this is a feat that works really well for low level characters, but there are still even better options at that point as well. So I don't see a great use for the Rune Shaper feat unless there's some story reason, right? You run into a giant rune carver and he just gives your character this for free. And honestly, this is probably what I would use this for as a DM if I were to use it at all. Is as like an epic boon or a magical boon that you just so happen to get on the side. But it's not. I wouldn't consider taking this as a player myself.
No, agreed. For flavor-wise, sure, maybe on a one-off or something if you just really want that flavor. But you're probably not going to use it too much. Although, I do think of it as a possibility for a stronger magic item, maybe. I know there's a good number of wondrous chalks out there that do different things, and I kind of like the idea of chalk that you can use to draw these runes and get some of these extra spells. Maybe not as a barbarian, but I think it would be pretty handy for somebody else to have these sorts of options. Maybe as just a general caster of sorts, maybe a sorcerer that leans into giant magic and honestly just wants an extra pool of spells here to pick from. I think that would be kind of neat, but otherwise, maybe it's not super useful.
Yeah, and if anything, it would be nice if you knew all of these runes and you can just swap them out, whenever, right? So maybe on a short rest, you can take any rune from these, the spells included here, and then inscribe it. But you can only have, up to your proficiency bonus or half your proficiency bonus rounded down per time you do that. Then I could see this being usable. Like if it's a more open version of Magic Initiate where you can swap them out. But yeah, no, as is, it's too restrictive for it to really be considered in my mind.
Although, now that I'm really thinking about it, they talk in this book a lot about, giant ruins and places that they used to rule and no longer do. I love the idea of an adventuring group finding some sort of giant ruins, and maybe they're hunting for some sort of runic magic, and they do find basically this chalk set of some sort, or this it's like a learner's a learner's set for learning giant magic of some sort, and you open it up, and maybe there's a piece of chalk for each of these spells, and so each one has like one use. You could draw it on yourself for the day or some of your equipment, and at some point during the day you can use that spell. That might be kind of cool. It give you a little bit of flavor of different spells. You could try some things out maybe before you take them. Something good for lower level play anyway, because none of the spells are fantastical. They're not like 4th level or higher or anything like that. So I think it would be a good little magic tester kit into giant magic sort of a feel. But maybe something like that would be kind of neat.
For sure. Yeah, and then so the other feat that they include here is Strike of the Giants, which this is, in my mind, very similar to the Goliath sub races that they've included in a Unearthed Arcana for 1D&D recently. So I'm curious if this is going to stay and that's going to go, or what the case is. But interesting regardless. So when you take this feat, you can choose one of the following benefits. Once per turn, when you hit a target with a melee weapon using an attack, a weapon attack, or a ranged attack using a thrown weapon, you can imbue the. Let me rephrase. It's melee or thrown weapons, but not ranged attacks. And so you can imbue your strike with one of the following features. So Cloud Strike, you can the target takes an extra 1d4 thunder, and they have to succeed on a wisdom save, or you become invisible to it until the start of your next turn. That's pretty cool. Fire Strike, the target takes a flat extra d10 of fire damage. Nothing to sneeze at. That's a whole ass firebolt. And you can get this at first level. So it's a weapon attack plus firebolt. That's not bad. Frost Strike, the target takes an extra 1d6 cold damage. If the target is a creature, it must succeed on a con save, or its speed is reduced to 0 until the start of your next turn. That would be good if you use this on throwing weapons, for sure. And then Hill Strike, the target takes an extra 1d6 damage of the weapon's type. If the target is a creature, it must succeed on a strength save or have the prone condition. That's pretty good. The ability to, every time you, or I guess it's once per turn, right? Yeah, once per turn when you hit a creature, you just knock them prone. That's pretty beefy too. Stone Strike, they take an extra 1d6 force damage. If the target is a creature, it must succeed on a strength save or be pushed 10 feet. You could definitely see the use of that. And it doesn't specify, it just says it must be pushed 10 feet from you in a straight line. So if you line this up right, you could probably hit someone 10 feet up in the air and then have them take an extra d6 of falling damage. So could be useful in that sense if your DM's okay with a little bit of stretching the rules there. And then Storm Strike, the target takes an extra 1d6 lightning damage. If the target is a creature, it must succeed on a con save, or it has disadvantage on attack rolls until the start of your next turn. So all decent. And then the DC for these effects is based on your strength or constitution modifier. And you can use this feat a number of times equal to your proficiency bonus. You regain all expended uses when you finish a long rest. Overall, I think that this feat is the only one that I might consider using if I were a like giant themed character. I mean, this is obviously appropriate on a Rune Knight or a Path of the Giant Barbarian, or even a Goliath or a Furbolg, or whatever character that you want to have that giant edge. I feel like all these options are super flavorful, and I'm a big fan. Any thoughts?
Yeah, no, I like these the most for sure. These are way better than the Rune Carver one. I would definitely consider taking these, and I actually may over in Spelljammer. It's definitely a possibility here. I think some of them are pretty strong. Some of them are a little weaker than the others. Again, leaning into the prone condition. I'm surprised. I really didn't think they were going to continue to push this, but I feel like with a lot of the newer stuff coming out, we see more and more of the prone condition being pushed, which obviously is very strong if you're in melee range. I wonder if it'll continue to be strong that way or not. I'm not sure. But prone's obviously very strong. We don't see it a whole lot in our own games. I guess it's a lot of ranged combat or a lot of magic, honestly, nowadays over in Avernus. So, I don't know. Maybe it'll be more useful than I expect it to be, or especially at lower play, since you can get these feats at a lower level. But I like them. I think they're very flavorful. They're fun. Yeah, I could definitely see taking them, especially if I was going the full giant flavor. If I was going to be like a Goliath, Path of the Giant Barbarian, or Path of the Giant, I think that'd be sick.
Yeah, agreed. These are all cool, and then the other feats that they present here are all variations based on which option you choose for Strike the Giants. So if you take this first, then at 4th level or higher, you can take any of these other options. There's a lot of them here, and I know we're running a little low on time, so maybe we'll paraphrase. But essentially, each of them increases your ability score by 1. Usually, it's Strength, Con, or Wisdom. I believe that's the same for all of them. So it's either Strength, Con, or Wisdom, and then you get an additional feature that is specific to the giant type, and it usually involves some form of elemental resistance as well. So, for example, there's Ember of the Fire Giant. If you took the Fire Giant version of Strike the Giants, you have resistance to fire damage, and when you take the attack action, you can replace a single attack with a magical burst of flame that does a number of damage. Let's see, it's a dex save. Each creature of your choice within 15-foot radius sphere. They take some damage. It's a d8 plus your proficiency bonus, and then they have the blinded condition. Fury of the Frost Giant, very similar. You get resistance to cold damage, and then after a creature hits you with an attack, you can use your reaction to retaliate with some ice, which deals damage to them equal to 1d8 plus your proficiency, and their speed is reduced to 0 until the end of its next turn. Let's see. Cloud Giant, Cloudy Escape. You actually don't get an automatic resistance from this, but when a creature you can see hits you with an attack roll, you can use your reaction to give yourself resistance to that attack's damage, basically just uncanny dodge, and then you teleport to an unoccupied space within 30 feet. Let's see, Keenness of the Stone Giant. This one is kind of fun. So you gain Dark Vision out to 60 feet, and if you already have Dark Vision, you gain an extra 60 feet of it. Now I'm just imagining, the ideal Dark Vision build where you're, a drow, and then you add this, and then, you find some magic item to add even more, and you end up with 200, 300 feet of Dark Vision. That could be cool. But in any case, it gives you that, and then as a bonus action, you can take a rock and make a magical attack with it. It's actually a ranged spell attack with a range of 60 feet that uses the ability score increased with this feat. So you could make it Strength, Con, or Wisdom. So, that might be fun, actually, like a Stone Giant-themed druid who could use this. But in any case, on a hit, the rock deals 1d10 force damage, and the target must succeed on a Strength save or have the prone condition. Again, we really like the prone condition, so that one's pretty good. Let's see. Soul of the Storm Giant. You get a Maelstrom aura as a bonus action. You surround yourself with magical wind and lightning that extends 10 feet of you in every direction. While it's active, you have resistance to lightning and thunder damage. In addition, attack rolls against you have disadvantage. And whenever another creature starts its turn within the aura, you can force them to make a strength save. On a failed save, their speed is halved. You can use this bonus action, a number of times equal to your proficiency bonus. And that's true for all of these. It's all proficiency bonus based. And then Vigor of the Hill Giant. When you're subjected to an effect that would move you at least 5 feet or give you the prone condition, you can use your reaction to steady yourself, and you aren't moved. I don't know how often it really is that enemies are trying to move me, but I like the flavor of that. I just don't know how often I would pick that. And then you get Iron Stomach, which whenever you eat food as a part of a short rest and spend 1 or more hit dice to regain hit points, you regain additional hit points equal to your con mod plus proficiency bonus. This one's kind of poopy. So if you really like that Hill Strike of the Giants, I would skip the Vigor of the Hill Giant feat. But overall, these are neat and flavorful. But like I said, it's kind of a shame that you have to devote 2 specific feats to getting like all of the might of a giant, right? You don't get 1 feat that gives you the resistance and the extra stuff necessarily. It's the first one gives you something for your attacks, and the second one gives you like this alternate feature that you can use.
Yeah, especially as a barbarian, I really think if you're going to use these, you're probably going to lean Rune Knight because fighters get extra feats. As a barbarian, I can't warrant using multiple feats for this. You'd have to be like a minimum of level 8 at that point there, and I don't know. I just think about if you don't roll max strength, or if you want up your strength or constitution as a barbarian, which is very average, right? You want up your health, you want to get your damage up. It's going to be difficult to make this work with the barbarian, I think, but just a basic thought. But I do really like a lot of them. I think they're very flavorful, especially the hill giant one. To be honest, I really like the bulwark where you just stand your ground. Like if a ship flips, maybe you're on a ship in Spelljammer and the ship flips or gets attacked by something large, and everyone else gets thrown. You just stand your ground and lock up and don't get thrown at all. That would be really, really sick.
That's a good point. I didn't even imagine like you're in a situation where everyone's on a ship or, everyone's on this space that moves and you can just use your reaction to not be affected. That's pretty cool, to be fair.
I was thinking probably most commonly the wing attack from a dragon where it pushes you around. So you probably wouldn't get moved by that.
Oh, yeah. Yep. That's a good example. Absolutely. So that one definitely has its uses too. It's just more situational versus the others.
Agreed. And I guess because we were running low on time here, before we jump into some of our favorite creatures here in the back, Zach, I think I'm going to give a couple honorable mentions of things that I like in this book here, just a brief few. I do really like on page 32, they talk about some of the cults of giants, right? And this book mentions frequently that there are these evils that, just like anybody else in the D&D world, giants can be drawn the exact same way to fiends and demons and things of that sort. And these 4 cults that they give, the cult of evil earth, water, fire, and air, they're just great, solid examples of basic evil villain factions, right? There's no black and white, or there's no like line of gray where the lines of morality and ethics are kind of blurred. These are evil groups. Just straight up, they're terrible. They want to destroy the world, right? The cult of evil fire specifically, they just want to burn the world down. Like literally that's their whole objective, is just to destroy everything with fire. It's pretty ridiculous, right? And the same thing with the water as well, where they just want to freeze everything up. It's kind of ridiculous, but I love it.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting that they called back to those two, because the cults of elemental evil are sort of an existing faction that has appeared sparingly throughout 5e, except of course there was Princes of the Apocalypse. That's where they got their time to shine. But I'm surprised this late in the game we're bringing them up again, since they really haven't had much to do in the majority of 5e adventures. But definitely, I agree. I think it's awesome that, what happens if a giant, a frost giant joins the cult of evil water, or a fire giant joins the cult of evil fire. That's awesome. I really, I like the directions that they went here. It does sadden me though that they it seemed like they were really scraping the bucket for like all the juicy nuggets they can get about giants. But there aren't any interesting ogres in this book. I feel like that's a missed opportunity.
That is disappointing. I didn't think about that. They don't have any trolls or ogres as far as I could tell. Huh.
Well, they do have 1 or 2 trolls. Let me see. Because I remember they have I believe it's the troll amalgam. Let me see.
Oh, gosh. They do have a lot of hulks, which I haven't seen mentioned before. I do like all the hulks that they offer.
Yeah. The very last 2 monsters in this book are trolls. So there's the troll amalgam. If a bunch of trolls get killed at once and then regenerate together, they become like this gross rat king monstrosity.
Oh, that's disgusting.
Which is, it's pretty cool. CR17. And then there's a troll mutate. I don't know if they tried to call it a mutant and messed up, or I don't know. I don't know why they call it a troll mutate. But in any case, if a troll is subjected to weird circumstance when they're regenerating, then they can become a mutant with weird features. So they can have like an elastic body, a psionic mirror. They could be spell scarred or have a winged form. All interesting. And the picture that they give you has all 4 of those things, and it's disgusting. I hate it. This is the troll that I like the least, for sure.
I do really like trolls. I look forward to using some more in games in the future. I guess jumping into... Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead. Oh, okay. All right. So the one other thing that they do with trolls within the bestiary at least is they have Fenseers, which I believe are they're trolls who are either they've come from trolls or they share a similar ancestor with trolls, but they've grown in a different way. So now they're like these almost hag-like forest monsters. These guys are definitely really. I just love the artwork on this guy where he's like coming out of this hut with a long tongue. It's basically like a troll who looks more like a hag, essentially. Very cool, like fey giant type creature.
Yeah, very, very cool artwork. The other two things, and Zach, maybe prep one of your favorite creatures here to talk about in just a minute. But as far as my other two honorable mentions, I want to jump into really quick before we jump into some of these monsters here. The Hidden Rune on page 39. I love the concept of this. It's basically the idea that long, long ago, the giants ruled the world and all this. And of course, Annam, this god of giants, right, that has had all these demigod children that have ruled over the giant factions. There is some sort of rune that he passed down to a giant civilization to really create the world as it was, to really grow and become a powerhouse in the realm, right? It's a rune that would just let them do anything they needed to, for the most part, a rune of power. And the idea is that it was somehow lost to time, and no one knows where this hidden rune is. So I think it would be a fantastic campaign idea that someone has unearthed the hidden rune of like creation or power of something that just has unspeakable strengths here, and that you'd have to stop it, find it, or use it to stop something else. I think that would be fantastic. Just quick honorable mention there. And
absolutely.
And then finally, the Steward of the Eternal Throne on page 40. I love this. This is very Oath of the Watchers to me, as far as paladins go. It's a faction of giants, this group of giants that believed the reason that they fell from power is actually because of the sin of kind of taking over and enslaving a lot of the smaller people, not taking their problems into account, not assisting them, and just sort of worrying about themselves. And they see this as this big problem that really made them fall from power. So this group of people, the stewards of the eternal throne, they believe the only way that the giants can grow back into power is by helping the small folk, listening to their problems, taking them into their ranks, and all working together to just create a better world. So very, very cool idea. I could see this being some sort of group, maybe alongside the Harpers or something, some sort of secret agency perhaps, but definitely a very cool group to have in your world. I'm not sure the perfect placement for them. Maybe it would be, some sort of world-ending threat that you have to work alongside of them for information. Maybe you reach in, you just need like an artifact that they have that they've collected to stop a certain threat. Or maybe, since giants live such a long time, maybe they are members or elders of the stewards of the eternal throne that you could visit, and they could give you, key ideas or keen collections of their own memories of how they defeated an ancient dragon of sorts or something like that. I think it'd be really, really neat. So really just love these little tidbits of information, and I look forward to using them, to be honest. I want to use a lot of these. They're really good. Similar to a quick book on one-off ideas or something like that. Very, very neat stuff. Really, if you get this book, take the time to dig into some of the lore, because I think it's its strongest bits there.
Yeah, absolutely. And so essentially the whole second and third chapter is all just material for the DM to pull from. So I absolutely love the different factions that they have for giants. Really, I think Stewards of the Eternal Throne is just an amazing backstory for a character. I made one for Sean Sixoff recently. He was a Furbolg knight, and I really wish that this book had come out before then, because I definitely would have had him be a steward of the Eternal Throne. That was definitely the vibe I was going for. So yeah, super awesome stuff they've got in there. Definitely check it out. We'll skip over all of chapter 3, which is essentially just a whole bunch of tables for different encounters that you can have surrounding specific types of giants, and how you can fit them into either just a short adventure or into a larger campaign. And then chapter 4 is very similar to the Dragon Layers chapter from Fizban's. They just give you a whole thing about giant enclaves with maps and just specific adventures or adventure hooks that you might run into that would lead you to such a place. I haven't looked into these super deep, but I know I believe it's the Star Forge is one that is particularly interesting, where either fire giants or, it really just makes you think of that one scene with Peter Dinklage from not Guardians of the Galaxy, but Avengers, where he forges the impossible axe. It's definitely that kind of area. So definitely cool flavor and lots of good jumping off points if you're a DM and you're just thinking, I want to run an adventure with giants. Let's get a location. Let's get something together real quick. It's not, a full module. You still have to do most of the work yourself, but definitely some good jumping off points there. And then we are nearing the end of this episode, and we want to talk about the bestiary, so I'll only briefly mention the giant treasures that they have here, but they're cool. Lots of cool magic items in here. A lot of them are specific to particular gods that they established in the first couple chapters, but yeah, lots of great flavor. A personal favorite of mine is the Thunderbus, which is a storm giant themed blunderbuss. Definitely super cool in flavor there. But there's just a ton of cool stuff. So maybe as a player don't check these out, but DMs definitely give it a look. See if your anything might be cool to place in one of your adventures. But anyway, we're finally to the bestiary, and there are so many different types of each of the the standard types of giants listed here, as well as a bunch of extras on the outskirts. Drew, why don't you go ahead and give me your honorable mention or your favorite from this section, and I'll go ahead and do the same.
Yeah, so quick honorable mention here. I really like the Fomorian Noble on page 143. It's definitely not the scariest giant by any means, but when you think of Fomorian, we have a miniature that's in our shelf for the longest period of time, and it's just this grotesque purple giant with a big old club and a bulging eye. And when I think Fomorian, that's exactly what I think of. And you see a lot of artwork for things like this in the book. But the Fomorian Noble is actually just this really pretty looking giant. There's a purple skin. They have like long elf looking ears. Very cool. I never thought of a Fomorian as just like this noble, maybe a caster of sorts. Very, very cool. I like that as an honorable mention. Another honorable mention.
Well, and so I don't know if you know the lore behind Fomorians, but it definitely ties into that because they were sort of established as this, they were the prettiest of all the giants and favored among Anam, but their progenitor, I forget his name, but he was, a dick, and so they decided to invade the Feywild and sort of try and take everything over, and that backfired on them, and so they were cursed to ugliness. And so the few Fomorians who escaped that fate are these elvish-looking giants that you see here. So definitely cool that we actually, we get to see those because they've been referenced in D&D lore for the longest time, but I'm not sure if we've ever actually gotten a look at what these characters look like. And sorry to interrupt you, but I do want to bring up one of my honorable mentions and maybe my favorite one here. Funny that you brought up Fomorians. We didn't plan this, but my probably my favorite monster in this whole book is the Fomorian Deep Crawler, which is definitely an ugly Fomorian, but he's just this, Fomorians typically live in the Underdark or the Feywild, right? Or even the Feydark. So just the concept of, all right, well, it's a creature that thrives in these cavernous spaces, but he's huge. So he's got to be able to squeeze into these tiny openings. And so it's just this Fomorian, essentially contortionist who's, it's just disgusting looking at them. He's got his foot in front of his face and his arm underneath behind. It's like basically a spider giant, essentially. And so they can, they've got spider climb, and they're just disgusting and scary. And I definitely want to use this, perhaps in an adventure that I'm running for you guys. We'll see if I can fit them in there. But definitely, just look at them. It's that's probably my favorite. And I love the scary ones or the gross, disgusting monsters. So definitely glad to get that representation here.
Yeah, no, for sure. I kind of hope you don't use that one because if Golem was a monster, I feel like that's what he'd be. It's really,
it's definitely
disgusting.
like Giant Gollum from Lord of the Rings, actually, now that you mention it.
Another quick honorable mention on my end. The Fire Gaunt on page 137, absolutely sick. It's the premise is that they are a fire giant with just so much just fiery hatred in them that they can't move on into the afterlife. and they're just this undead, necrotic, fiery, bursting at the seams fire giant. It's horrifying. Looking at this picture, definitely one of my favorite pieces of art in the book. I don't want to fight this. I absolutely don't. It's scary. It's a challenge rating 11. If I saw this running at me, I'm turning away. There's no way I'm fighting this thing. That's absolutely way too scary. And then
and you know that's interesting too. And they do this for all the giants. It seems like they've got like a specific template that they wanted to apply for each of the giant types. So they've got everyone has an undead form now, and surprisingly, none of them are just like a standard like fire giant skeleton, for instance. I don't think we really have stat blocks for those, but like just imagine a plain ass necromancer revived a giant, and now it's huge. You don't really get that in this book, but we have a specific undead version of all the different giants. I believe the Cairnwright is another cool one. They're stone giants who came back to life as a revenant, essentially. They were working on some master artwork that took longer than their lifespan to complete, and so they rise back up from the grave just to continue their work. That's super cool too. Sorry, go ahead with your last honorable mention.
No, you're good. And speaking on the undead versions, the Barrowghast is also really cool. Just the undead version of a hill giant that was so hungry it couldn't move on. Very, very cool. But my last honorable mention that I want to throw in, maybe my favorite one in this book, as silly as it is, I absolutely love it just because of the lore, and everyone knows the story. The giant goose. I love the giant goose. It's so silly, right? But everyone knows the story of, they climb up into the clouds, and then they have to steal away this goose that lays golden eggs from the giants. And when I hear this story as a kid, I've always imagined that the goose was normal sized. But imagine a group of adventurers, you have to get up there and you're like, oh yeah, we're going to steal this goose and it's going to make us rich. And you get up there, but the goose is giant. How do you move that? How do you get it back? It's just, I think it's really silly, and I'm just really glad that they put it in the book. They even talk about how expensive the golden eggs are that it lays inside the caption. I can't imagine fighting.
Yeah, and they've got they've got a nice little table for what you might find inside of a golden egg too. So maybe it's made of candy on the inside, or it's got a potion of giant strength of some kind, or other magic items that you might find. So definitely cool. And I love it's got its thunderous honk as well, where it just it honks so loud that you got to make a con save to not have your eardrums burst. Definitely, I wasn't gonna call out the giant goose, but it's absolutely warranted. I love that one too.
Yeah, great flavor. Absolutely. A lot of really, really good monsters in here. Zach, which ones are your favorites or your honorable mentions here?
Yeah, well, so I've mentioned a couple, and I don't know if I'm stealing your thunder here, Drew, so stop me if I am. But we do have to talk about the scions of the different giant types. So just like we had great worms in Fizzbands, we've got these just absolute, raid boss, high level, CR23 is what these are, monsters that are essentially the elemental perfection of whatever particular type of giant they are. So you've got like a stone giant scion, a cloud giant scion, and the way that they've built these out is different than a lot of the monsters, because they start they're actually two separate stat blocks rolled into one. So I feel like fighting one of these is probably akin to fighting a great worm, because all things considered, they've got roughly 1,000 hit points. So first you've got the cradle of whatever giant it is, and it's this specific elemental form, and then once you destroy that, the giant within awakens, and then it's even more powerful, so you got to fight through that. But all of those are super cool. I don't have any one particular that I like more than the others, though I'll say obviously the fire giant, the Scion of Searcher artwork is probably one of my favorites in the book, and that was heavily advertised when it was coming out as well. Super, super cool. I also love the Scion of Scoreus, who's the stone giant one. So those are definitely neat. Other than what we've already mentioned, I'll say I'll go ahead and give my favorite giant monster here present. It probably is the Fomorian Deep Stalker. So if we're putting my absolute favorite, I think it's that one. But I also really like the Gigant. I don't know if you've looked at this at all, Drew.
No,
but
which
it's
one is
just
that?
this. Yeah, so it's a giant bug. It's gargantuan, and essentially the whole thing behind it is it's just it's a giant bug that preys on giants. It makes them look small, and so it's just this huge fucking monstrous insect that flies around and picks up giants. And this is the kind of thing that giants, right, in their culture, they would have nursery rhymes and things to beware of this monster, because when it comes, it comes, and there's nothing you can do about this giant CR20 beetle coming at you. So yeah, I definitely love the flavor of that. I mean, ultimately it is just a big dumb monster to fight, but I love the concept of there being like a monster that the giants fear for its size, right?
Yeah, no, that's absolutely terrifying. Did you see its ability, the scale dust on the bottom that recharges 5 to 6? It releases this dust when it's nearby through its wings. It just kind of bats it around. If it gets you and you don't make the save, you can't heal for an hour. That's terrifying against something that does that much damage, right? Imagine it knocks you down, you just can't heal up. Someone has to try to stabilize you, I guess. They have to use their action to do so. But magical healing wouldn't even work. That's nuts.
Yeah, that is absolutely nuts. And you know what? I was just going to call out that it's interesting that it doesn't actually have legendary resistance. But now that I'm looking, it seems like a lot of these monsters don't actually have, like even the higher CR ones don't have legendary actions or resistance. So that's interesting as well.
Yeah, except, of course, the Scions that have 5 uses or even 6 uses of legendary resistance, which is absolutely disgusting. You might as well not even cast any spells that make them save for it, so they're just going to resist it. That's crazy.
Yeah, but that is interesting, though, that there aren't legendary actions, even on the Scions. I wonder if that's like a direction they're heading with new design. Maybe they're trying to do away with legendary actions because they feel cheap from a player's perspective.
See, that's crazy because I definitely don't agree with that. I actually love the idea of legendary actions. To me, if you're fighting one really strong, beefy creature, I think they need a way to go more than just on their turn to really kind of be all big and powerful, Because if they just go one time, I mean, I guess we have to make their abilities more powerful. I like the idea that they don't have one giant stomp, right? But instead they can hit you a couple times each. I think that's more fun anyway, but maybe that's just me.
Yeah, we'll definitely see. But that's interesting. Yeah, I only noticed that just now. But I will mention, these monsters do have lots of shit that they can do on their actual turn. For instance, like the Scion of the stone one, it makes 4 attacks on its turn. Just with its regular action, and then each of those attacks does the 40 some or 30 to 40 damage, and then plus they've got different effects on top of those. So definitely nothing to sneeze at for sure. But yeah, that is interesting.
So I guess as we're at the end here, maybe we give our quick reviews of Bigby's Glory to the Giants.
Yeah, so overall, definitely a good book for any DM to add to your collection. Obviously, this isn't necessary reading, right? This is a D&D book for the diehard D&D fans that want a little bit extra. If you're a DM out there and your group hasn't run Storm King's Thunder, I definitely would recommend. I mean, this is basically required reading for that book. My one regret of that campaign is that this hadn't come out yet, because I definitely would. Really, all of our gripes with that campaign are just how many of the same giant types that you're meant to fight over and over and over. So the extra flavor and different kinds of giants that they add in here definitely would have been very welcome in that book. So definitely a good resource for that, or any giant-themed campaign you want to run. If Storm Kings isn't your thing and you want to write your own, it's definitely perfect for that. Otherwise, it's also just a great piece if you've already got Fizban's Treasury of Dragons. really, you might as well get this one too, just to complete your collection. But overall, definitely a book geared towards DMs. A lot of the stuff featured is really geared in that direction. So if you're a player, maybe skip this one, or at least get it on sale. I wouldn't say MSRP of $60 or whatever else it costs in your country of origin. Probably isn't worth the asking price. But if you want to pick it up on Amazon for a little bit cheaper, then by all means, it's a good book.
Yeah, agreed. I think you definitely have to lean into the DM side of things here. I think overall I would have to give it, as a DM, I think I would give this like a B+. I really, really love the lore. I love all the monsters they're offering. And since we get more and more abilities and powers and subclasses for all of our heroes, I think it's well needed that we need more and more monster types out there, especially as people play for longer and longer. D&D obviously has been out for a bajillion years. So just more things that we can get into combat with is huge for me. And I think there was a ton of them in this book here. A lot of really interesting ones, too, on a creature type that we don't get to hear a whole lot about. Again, completely agree. I wish we had this for Storm Kings. We would have fought a lot of really cool stuff. Not that we didn't fight anything cool in Storm Kings. Fantastic campaign. I highly recommend anyone else runs it or plays it. But definitely a lot of cool stuff in here. The lore really, really pushes me to give this a better rating because I don't normally read these books all the way through. I often do like a very thorough skim. I dive into the things that I really like, and I pick some pieces out for one-offs and things like that. And I like to listen to a lot of online reviews of what people think of the book. People that are a little more perceptive than myself that might pick out something that's wrong or something that's really, really good or strong for the community. But this time I actually didn't do that. I really, really dug into it, especially a lot of the beginning of the book where they really dive into the lore, and I just thought it was fantastic. Maybe I won't think so a week from today when I hear some other people's thoughts, but based off what Zach thinks and the stuff that I've read here, I really, really, really did enjoy it, and I'm actually going to read some more on this pretty soon. So I give it a solid B+. But again, if you're a player, maybe hold off on this until it's a little cheaper. You're not going to find a ton of options, but definitely a couple really cool ones. So B+ on mine.
I think that's fair. I feel like B+, B+ for DMs, C, I don't know, a C for players.
Yeah, I think that's perfectly fair. I would agree with that entirely.
Right. But with that, thank you all so much for listening to Table Talk Friday. My name is Zach, and I've been joined by my one best friend, Andrew Romano. If you'd like to support the show, please consider following us on Patreon, where you can join the ranks of Good Old Gamer, our producer tier Eric, and you can follow us on any social media platforms that you like. We may post, we may not. That's for you to find out. And with that, Drew, anything that you would like to close us out today?
Absolutely. Can I have the Golden Goose take us out?
Honk. Honk. I don't know what else you want from me. That's the end of the show.